Hi, this is Adam Cole with Truer MU, and these are 5 things you need to know to create beautiful poetry. Number 1, a poet needs a real reason to be writing a poem as opposed to a novel, story, essay, or even painting a painting or taking a photograph, which might be more appropriate. Does it have to be a poem? Number 2, a poet needs to know their audience. A poem doesn't have to be meaningful in Western European terms to be great. An audience at a poetry slam may be hearing something that is very specifically political, that uses a lot of profanity, that meanders, and if the poet is reaching the audience, then it's a success. Poems may be transitory, improvised, not meant to be put in an anthology. It all has to do with the poet and the audience intended for the poem. If a poet doesn't know their audience, they're setting themselves up for disappointment at best and failure at worst. Failure which may make them reconsider their art and ability. My attempts to read my poetry at live poetry events have not had the impact I wanted them to have because my poems need to be read and contemplated rather than performed. Because I know this, I tend to try to get my poems in front of the right people so I can make an impact and know when I've scored a win. Number 3. A poet needs to make the most of their language. Little children write great poetry. They know their language inside and out. The limited vocabulary and grammar is fine because they can push it to the limit of their ability and you feel the power of that. Adults who are not highly educated can also write great poetry if they use the language they have available to them effectively or with devastating effect. Number 4. A poet needs to know why other poets write or wrote the way they do. One of the biggest problems for students of poetry is to take on a romantic style or a modern style without any real understanding of why poets wrote like that. To copy Ezra Pound's style is fine, and for that matter, copying Chaucer or Shakespeare is also fine. But if you want people to hear your voice, you have to understand that by not understanding the reason Shakespeare wrote sonnets, you're going to be putting a serious filter between you and your audience. At best, you'll sound like a very effective parody of your favorite poet, and at worst, you'll sound like someone who doesn't know what they're doing. It's a lot of work to understand poetic movements, and a lot of poets don't bother. You can write great poetry without understanding it, but you'll be shooting in the dark. You may hit the bullseye, but you may never know why you've succeeded. Number 5. A poet needs to read other poets, dead ones at least, and live ones, even friends at best, and if possible, to study other people's poems. To write poetry without reading it may be a healing activity for you, and I encourage you to do it for that reason in your journal. If you want to share it, though, you're getting into the realm of art, which has an audience that needs a level of competence to bridge the gap between you and them. You might want to know something about the art of poetry, what's been done, how someone else expressed the same thing you're expressing, how someone solved the problem of a particular poem that you're also facing in yours. It's daunting to go from writing words in a poetic style to writing poems. It's hard, it's scary, it may seem like more trouble than it's worth, but it's rewarding, it can be fun, and in some cases, it may be the most powerful way to express yourself. Thanks for joining me, thanks for listening, and good luck.